Today we have an amazing panel, all who come from the House of Disney in various forms. So first of all, let's start out with, well, let's do them chronologically, the first released. So here joining us is Katherine Sarafian, from one of the producers of Brave.
We begin our process with tons and tons of research, because with this we're going back to an ancient and mythical Scotland, and we don't feel like we can do that until we go to Scotland. So we really don't strive for mimicry or accuracy, because otherwise we would just shoot live action. The art of filmmaking at Pixar is about creating a believable world, and so authenticity is really important to us.
There are a number of firsts to this movie. So let's look at that. This is the first fairy tale that Pixar has done. It's the first female protagonist movie. And you guys made a lot of technological changes for the way Pixar works to make this movie. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we think of, at Pixar, we do think we do something different every time, but this one was, really especially different. We definitely were creating a naturalistic world, and with a female at the center of the story. We hadn't done that before. It shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be something we need to discuss. And yet, wow, all the reactions like, oh, a female. So we really treated her as character. In terms of fairy tale, actually, we think of it more as a folk tale and a cautionary tale. We did, hearken back to the Grimm's tales and the darker tales that we grew up with, and wanted to honor, fairy tale elements with a bit of magic. But at its core, it's really a family story, a parent-child relationship, and that's what we tried to craft: a mother and a daughter, and their journey and their mistakes and their learnings, set in this ancient time period.
One of the things about the story is this is very much, I mentioned it earlier, this is a female-driven and led movie.
Yeah, we haven't put a female at the center as our, core protagonist in one of the Pixar films. And a lot of people say, well, what took so long? It's like, because the right story has to be at the right time. If we were going down a checklist, hey, it's time for a female story, it would have been manufactured. This came from a true relationship. Director Brenda Chapman, director Mark Andrews, they called on their experience, their Scottish heritage, and their family relationships. Brenda had a 6-year-old daughter who was feisty and spirited, and Brenda thought, what kind of teenager will she be? That was the relationship that was the birth of the movie and of the core character, and we really wanted to be true to a parent-child relationship there, and we treated her as character, not as female. And I think that's that's why we didn't let ourselves get hampered in like the girl of it. Oh, what would a girl do? No, what would this character do? She's a teenager. She makes mistakes. She screws up. She's a big pain. That's the kind of stuff we focused on.
What is it like directing an animated film like this? You're working with two great actresses, and there's a number of great actors in this, and a very quite intricate story, actually. That there's actually a Braveheart reference in here that's, I think, quite witty. How do you get that? How do you translate that from the studio to the screen?
Well, we really spend a lot of time with our actors, because animation doesn't look great until it looks great. It kind of looks awful in the beginning. Hey, here's some storyboards. Trust me, it'll be great. We're going to the stage. I can only show you polygons, but imagine, if you will, this fully rendered character. And our actors, they take this leap of faith, but we tell them, we focus completely with them on story and story point. We'll show a few visuals, but mainly it's like, this is who you are. It's your motivation. They approach it like any other role. Only, they're in a room with us, and we try to get a lot of takes, because we're really going to be taking it back to our studio in an editorial, cutting performances against each other. We want to have a lot to choose from, because suddenly the energy of Emma's performance was more than we expected. We asked Kelly to retake hers to match that energy. So it was great. And also we were able to sometimes play back performances for the other, like, this is what Emma did with it. What do you think? And like, oh, that's rubbish. But it was fantastic to have, in animation you have so much control and flexibility with all the pieces that you're assembling. It's painstaking, again, pixel by pixel, shot by shot, frame by frame. For years we make these movies.
Allison Abbate, who is one of the producers of Frankenweenie, will be joining us. Frankenweenie is a remake, really, isn't it?
It is a remake. Tim made a live-action short when he was at Disney in 1984, and it was kind of his first try at doing a live-action piece, and of course that was sort of his calling card after that, and he went on to have the career that he's had. But interestingly, it was an idea that he had, though, when he was a little boy and he actually lost his dog. So even though it is a remake of that short, it's an idea that literally he was a kid in bed when he was 12 years old, and he kind of combined his love of old horror movies and cinema and Frankenstein, and thought, well, what if I could kind of harness the power of electricity? So for me, that's what's even more exciting. It's a remake of a dream he had. Because this movie really is, Tim wanted to remake it in stop motion because the medium itself speaks to kind of the storyline. It's about kind of breathing life into inanimate objects. And so the puppetry of it is so important to him, and the artistry that goes into making the puppets. It's a love story between a boy and his dog, and it really is, because really it's that love that gave young Victor the kind of confidence and the impetus to do the impossible. And so I think for me what was a nice thing too is that it takes that Frankenstein story that's all about rejecting the creation and creating a monster, and shows you if you take care of the ones that you love, you don't create monsters, you create lovely heroes or lovely beings. And so it was nice to kind of put that in the context of a boy and his dog relationship, I think, really.
Animation is not a single genre. It's a multitude of things. It's like saying movies and only one thing happens. Stop motion is something very particular. What are some of the challenges as a filmmaker in putting together something like this and the process?
Yeah, I think that almost everything about stop motion is challenging just because it is a physical medium. So it's got all of the sort of challenges of animation. So you have to kind of storyboard everything. If you don't put it in the storyboard, no one makes it, and therefore you can't have it. So you really have to kind of know everything that's going to be in your mise en scène right from the start. So there's that, but there's also live action kind of issues. You have weather. Literally, if it's too hot or too cold, the sets will contract and expand, and you'll have to wait until you can heat them up again to get them back to the degrees they were yesterday. So things that you would never think would really affect you. It's real puppets, real space, real lighting. Our cinematographers are like live action cinematographers, so they have similar kinds of issues, only very, very small. Right? So it is, and then one of the big challenges, which I think people don't often understand, is that we have 30 shooting units going at the same time. So literally behind every curtain is an animator, a set, a lighting camera crew. And they're all doing first unit. It's like every scene, like there's an emotional scene here, a comedy scene here, an action scene here. And so for the director, you really have to kind of keep it all together and kind of know that when you go into here, you're sad, and here you're having some fun, or and that's it. It's 30 first units going for 3 years.
Phil Johnston and Jennifer Lee from Wreck-It Ralph come and join us. We have a movie about an old school video game bad guy who wants to be good, who jumps from game to game. We have Sarah Silverman. We have Diet Coke Hot Springs. We have the evil Pac-Man.
Yep.
There's a Kool and the Gang song in there.
There is.
There's an Eminent Domain reference. Are you guys trying to become the Wikipedia of pop culture, or it just kind of happened?
Well, it just sort of happened that way. I mean, with that first clip, Ralph is this video game bad guy from the 80s. And so we were looking for a way to, make his journey make sense. He's a guy having an existential crisis. He's been doing the same job, not appreciated for 30 years, and using perhaps our own experience with 12-step groups, figured a 12-step group for bad guys, it was something that everyone can relate to. You're talking about it appealing to kids and adults, and I think that does both things. It gets across the premise of the movie, which is this big, vast, sweeping thing involving all these video game universes, but puts it in a very small, relatable, setup for Ralph's journey.
And Ralph's got real life problems like us, and he's feeling like there's got to be more to life than this. And so he does. He goes on this journey, and the scope of it is huge. And there are all these different video game worlds, from high tech to low tech to brand new. And
you have a lot of cameos. You have the Pong boards. Sonic the Hedgehog shows up. Who else?
Paperboy, Tapper, Dig Dug.
There's kind of a Halo reference.
Yeah, I mean, when we started coming up with all these worlds and all the characters, not thinking what a colossal nightmare that was going to be for the producers to have 190 characters. It's 3 times more characters than have ever been in an animated film. And all these different worlds, and each world needs to look like an 80s era game and a 90s era game and this new game. Not occurring to us what a nightmare that was going to be for the production, but not our problem.
Luckily, our
so there
producer,
you go.
And our producer, Clark Spencer's the
Spoken like a writer.
nicest guy. Yeah. He didn't want to let us down. He really went all out and had every now and then he'd be like, Zangief, we're this close. I'm not going to give up. And he really, I don't think there were many we didn't get.
No, I don't think so.
You've got, in this vast world, though, you've really got 4 characters. You've got 4 actors. Very quickly, let's just talk about them and their relationship. Who plays who, for instance?
John C. Reilly is Ralph, and John brought so much to that character. I mean, before we started the film, Rich Moore and I, who were on it from the beginning, had to sit down with John and assure him that his input would be welcome, and that, you know, if things didn't feel organic to the character, that he wasn't going to go along with it. He refused to just come in and read the lines, which so often happens in animation. So John as Ralph, really John is Ralph. You know, there's an awful lot of John C. Reilly in that character.
And then Jane Lynch.
Yeah.
Jane Lynch is Sergeant Calhoun, and for her, you know, what was great about all these characters is, I mean, all the actors, is we actually had them come in and work together and improv, and having her with Jack McBrayer, who is Fix-It Felix Jr., the good guy to Ralph's bad guy, was hilarious to put this uber Sergeant Calhoun, who's in charge of this high-tech violent world, with this do-gooder handyman.
Yeah, and when Jane's character was first envisioned, it was as a man. And then we sort of started thinking, well, what's going to be funnier is this little munchkin 8-bit character falling in love with a super high-tech warrior princess goddess woman, and it became clear that Jane needed to be that person.
And then last, of course, we have Sarah Silverman.
Sarah Silverman, who plays a 9-year-old girl, and her relationship with Ralph is really the emotional through line of the movie.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Phil.
Thank you so much.